Kinetic Chain link. It's finally time to cover this because it has everything to do with the Isochain. Alright, so what is it? Let's cover that first. And it's how the body can be considered in terms of links or segments. Pretty much what that means is a full closed chain kinetic link, how the body functions from head to toe as one cohesive unit. So if we move one segment of the body, it's going to affect other part of the body. So the theory has actually been around since 1955 when Franz, hopefully I don't butcher this, Rouleau, a mechanical engineer. So pretty much Rouleau proposed a series of overlapping segments are connected via a pin joint. And these interlocking joints would create a system that allows movement of one joint to affect the movement of another joint within said kinetic link. Bringing it to the human body, it can be viewed the same way, pretty much a system of overlapping segments connected by a series of joints, called the kinetic chain. Movements occurring within each body segment is capable of two movement patterns, closed and open chain, which we're going to cover shortly. Speaking from an anatomic standpoint, the kinetic chain is covering interrelated groups of body segments, connecting joints, and muscles working together to perform movements and the portion of the spine to which they connect. When we talk about the upper kinetic chain, it's our spinal column, shoulder blades, shoulders, upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, and fingers. In the lower kinetic chain, again, the spine, pelvis, hips, upper legs, knees, lower legs, ankles, feet, and toes. No matter which chain, each joint in question is able to independently move through a variety of movements. Closed chain promote joint stabilization, and they have the potential to recruit even more muscles and their associated joints. They're transferable to pretty much all daily movements that involve more than one joint. And what's that going to lead to? Better neuromuscular coordination and overall joint health. I think a lot of us are starting to get where I'm going with this as far as the Isochain. But let's go back to being nerdy again. So a lot of closed chain exercises are considered, and they're used in programming for functional training purposes. An exercise that trains movement, not isolated muscle groups like bicep curls and all that. Now let's switch it up and talk about open chain. Now these open chain movements involve more shearing force. They tend to recruit more muscle associated with only a single working joint in resistance training. And those are, like I said earlier, your leg extensions, your bicep curls, lat pull downs, bench presses. While the closed chain exercises, some examples of those are the squat, lunges, push-ups, and pull-ups. I wanted to cover the open and closed chains real quick because kinetic chain is what allows our body to move. Kinetic energy is how much force is created when an object is in motion. I know now we're starting to piece in more of the puzzle, right? And what better place to take it to next than, in my opinion, one of the greatest demonstrations of kinetic chain linking, the 1-inch punch. When assessing it, it just looks like it's a punch. Right? It's arm strength, how beefy, blah, 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 I'm strong. It's his entire body. And the power comes all the way through his foot, all the way through his leg, all the way out to the fist. Now, I kind of went over that in the Bruce Lee video, Dragon, which you can find right here. But what happens when you take all that wind up with your hips out of it? And we're already here. The amount of kinetic energy required for that is something that's trained best with overcoming isometric training. Ironically, Bruce Lee was a huge fan of, which also makes sense on how 1-inch punch could even exist. 2, why there was so much force at the end of it. You know what it reminds me of is that scene from the Fast and Furious. I'm not sure if it was 1 or 2, where they press the nitrous button and it shows like it zooms into the nitrous going through the car and your kinetic chain, all that kinetic energy driving from your foot and making your whole body move as one. That is where you get the true power of the 1-inch punch. Kinetic chain, the whole body moves as one. It's not just arm strength. Taking focus away from Bruce Lee for a second and bringing it into the Isochain. The Isochain has been one of the best pieces of equipment at teaching and producing energy production. Muscles are binary. They're either on or off. So if the body knows to go all in 100% and contract, then that's what it's going to do. And if you continually train your muscles to fire, then you're going to get all the gains associated with overcoming isometric training. And I've spoken about that on the channel many, many times. You guys have seen the videos. Though if you haven't seen the video on overcoming isometric training, in general, here's a link right here, you should check that out. The form is correct and we're performing an isometric contraction utilizing total body tension that we learned about in the total body tension video on the channel. And all the muscles are under fire as we go into the shoulder press. I'm just using the shoulder press as an example. You see where I'm starting to go, right? When we're going all in on a contraction, the amount of force we exert on impact is related to the kinetic energy of what we would produce while moving. It's the way the kinetic chain links up and interacts. It's why the 1-inch punch is honestly the pinnacle of demonstrating fantastic kinetic chain linking and muscle control, and to be honest, kinetic chain control. To have all those moving parts acting as one cohesive unit, you essentially have your entire body behind that fist, not just the fist. That's why this happens. And if overcoming isometric training on the Isochain is teaching us, with total body tension by the way, how to make the body move as one cohesive unit by tightening up. It's the foundational principle of total body tension. Having all the muscles under fire, under load as you're going into the contraction. Someone that practices this, their body is going to become so efficient at energy production. They're going to set themselves apart and put themselves in another tier of power, of generating power. This is definitely not an easy technique to master. I mentioned that in the total body tension video, but understanding the kinetic chain and combining the knowledge of the kinetic chain, the body's kinetic chain, and energy production, the principles, in addition to practicing total body tension, which is a freaking hard technique to master. I'm still working on it. I've gotten better, but it's still learning more about overcoming isometric training, total body tension, isotension, kinetic chain linking has now made something as insane as a 1-inch punch understandable. It makes sense now. Does it still look superhuman? Well, of course. I mean, the guy just got launched across the room by doing this. It makes sense. When you have somebody who's as adept as Bruce Lee with his body, his form is impeccable, and you combine overcoming isometric training, that's the result. But what are your thoughts? What do you think about kinetic chain linking, total body tension, and the Isochain? I believe that all three go hand in hand, and it's going to lead to some incredibly powerful athletes out here in the future once we really start to understand and start to program properly. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, go ahead and comment, and if you're not yet part of the squad, hit the subscribe button, come join the squad with us. We'll see you in the next video.